bottle of rum, and I hung out there for a good hour or so. And we got ourselves together, and we motored quite happily out of that area, picked up the batteries, and we continued to sail quite happily and uneventfully through the Virgin Islands. Now, the thing was with all of this was a nice little adventure. Oh, and by the way, as a result of that, one of the things that we had picked up from the wrecked Japanese freighter were diodes. And through the course of our trip, Carlos rewired the power system in the boat to where he installed some of these diodes between the batteries and everything that drew on the batteries so that they could be charged easily, but they were separated into different banks, so only the bank that was in charge of the engine could be drawn upon by the engine. So we never had that problem again. We took care of it, and I thought it was kind of cool that it was, it was from that stuff like the O-ring that connected the flywheel to the stereo knob, and these various components. And I still actually have some of those little components that allowed us to do that 30 years ago. So now this is not a life-threatening thing. Like I said, we could have somehow managed to get help and get out of there. But in a way, it's kind of a metaphor for what I've experienced through my life and what I've found very important. Looking at the ocean as this sort of thing that you kind of have to accept. There's an ebb and flow, there are currents, and things that you have no control over. It's going to take you places that you don't exactly expect. And when it does, you're going to see things that you didn't expect. There's a lot of sort of non sequitur things that happen when you're on the ocean, and you have to exert your mind to deal with those and focus. So there's this sort of thing, the way the world works, that is like non-linear. It's not a straight line. You end up getting pulled this and that way for these currents, and you end up seeing things that you don't expect, and you have to deal with it. Now, in my case, I found that just looking at something like this wreck, it's like we see this thing, and maybe we're not in dealing with a wreck, but we see this thing, and we say, let's go check it out. Let's poke it with a stick. Let's what can you do with it? Can you drink it? Can you eat it? Can you have sex with it? Maybe you can blow it up with explosives. And so if you see where I'm going, unknowingly, this metaphor for what I experienced in the Caribbean there has ended up forming a pattern for my life. And I've ended up doing things that I never would have expected. We ended up going, let's see the next shot, if it's what I think. We ended up staying in the Caribbean and worked our charter business for 4 years. This was part of the concern which I sort of neglected in the narrative. As all this was happening, it was starting to look like that. And the coral heads are essentially like rocks that are every 20 feet around me. So and the wind is going this way. So I'm having a tack up wind through this. This was concerning me. And I think it had something to do with me actually being able to start that damn engine. But anyway, we stayed there. We chartered successfully. We took out some 7,000 people diving. And as you can see, this was when I first acquired my propensity to strange hats and facial hair. And that, by the way, is my wife. Now, we eventually sailed back up to the States, and so along with this theme of this kind of non-linear thing, the ocean isn't a straight line. Your minds aren't a straight line. a lot of the things that we discover are not things that we were seeking at the time, and yet they turned out to be very important. And so I've seen that, have an effect on my life repeatedly throughout whatever I've done. And it's interesting to me that, at a certain point we ended up, my wife ended up being a science teacher, and I ended up going into special effects and then being in front of the camera with Mythbusters. And the thing is that Mythbusters unintentionally, and again, it wasn't something that we were seeking, it wasn't something we were expecting, Mythbusters turned out to have this incredible effect on science and engineering. We've seen people that have, kids that have started watching the show in like grade school or high school and become interested in things, made careers out of them, and become successful in those careers as a result of what we've done. And we didn't intend this. We had no idea about doing science. But the funny thing was, that's a 20-story building or whatever in New York City. This was something that we had no idea. And as it happens, and thinking about it, science itself is something that is a combination of this thing, just like with me in the Caribbean, where you find something that collects or that attracts your curiosity, something you want to. You may see it by accident. You may just happen to run into it. It may be a part of some adventure or other that you've undertaken, and you check it out. You investigate it. This is sort of a random kind of thing that is, I would liken to the way that kids and even young animals learn. They explore randomly their environment, and over time, through experience and experimentation with those things, they start to focus. So it's this weird combination of this non-linear, this non-straight line thing. Your brains don't work in straight lines. Nothing that you start out with works in straight lines. And then you end up focusing and making straight lines because you have to if you're going to make progress within those areas. You can't just wander and poke things with sticks and make progress. And I think that it's one of the reasons that we've had such a successful run with Mythbusters. We've been on air for 12 years now, and we've appealed to all these young people. We've influenced the popularity of science over the years. And I think that it's because the way we've approached science, not intending to do so at all, appeals to the way we naturally are, our nonlinear, our non-straight line brains, and yet with discipline and focus and direction, being able to take some of those random things and bring them into something that actually turns out to be really important. Thank you.